Okay, so you guys know how being petty is like my spiritual gift, right?
Welcome to a new segment I'm calling That's Not Biblical.
Thank you for your contribution, man. Now,
I feel like for the last 4 months, April's been like, we need to change the last slide of that intro video because we're on Monday nights now. And I just was watching it things I've still not done. Months later.
Everybody smile. I'm going to post you on my story. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Yay. Sometimes when I do that, they see the picture later and they're like, could have told me.
Yeah, tell them right now.
because sometimes we're like mid-word.
I think that's funny.
Do I look terrible? Because we can totally retake to make sure that
the best of any of us.
Oh, well, hair flip for
Okay.
me.
No, that's just because Rachel knows her angles. Like if I were to go, Rachel, taking a picture. See? Whereas every time someone tries to take a picture of me, I do this.
Even though the light,
Duck
get out of that.
face.
Yes.
my light's very shadowy. Hi, Caitlin. Hi, Lori. Hi, Jenny. Hi, Brandon. Everybody's saying hi in the chat. Hi, Joe. Already had so much wine. Can't wait to be live with y'all tonight. Joe is having a good time. And hello, my friends April and Abby.
Hello,
Oh,
my friend
wow.
Rachel.
How are you guys?
Wonderful. You're my one friend, Rachel.
Super
The
great.
one friend Rachel. Super great.
Super awesome.
I was getting ready to be like, it's been so long since we've talked, but we actually had a
We talked this
friend
morning.
chat today. But it had been a while before that with all the holidays and all the craziness. And
Yes, all the
Hi, Beth.
crazy.
everybody
crazy.
have good holidays?
Yes. It was hectic, but it was good.
Isn't it? Aren't they just always
Yeah, I guess they are always
draining?
all consuming.
Yes. I
I
end
feel
up
like
crying.
my holidays were really low key, which is new for me, and I enjoyed that.
Yeah.
Cool.
You I don't remember your specific ones with Christmas, but I love that your little foursome at your house has traditions for things. I love that about you guys. You were like, so this is what we do on this, and we always because
Oh
our
my
lives
gosh.
weren't like that. I like that. I'm jealous.
See, mine wasn't
Mm.
either. And so now I'm like, we will have traditions.
Yeah.
Every year I
Oh.
ask my kids, what are your favorite traditions? And it's more about reinforcing for them that we have traditions
Yeah.
than it is about because we
What
never
they
did
actually-
Santa. We don't do Elf on a Shelf. April, do you guys do Elf on a Shelf?
We do. I was actually about to tell a minor story. We did it a few years ago. I think we got it when my oldest was 2, when she was somewhat aware. So we were like, oh, this will be fun. We obviously didn't do that when we were kids. We did do Santa though. And every other year they just thought it was fun. They would look for the elf. Raylan, maybe she was 3. When she was 3, she named the elf Cheeks.
I
So-
love that.
That's
Because
really cute.
he has rosy cheeks. So
Because
she's
he has
like,
rosy
cheeks.
cheeks.
Yeah. So, but this year they got emotionally attached to this elf, and we don't even do any of the cool, he's taking a bath in hot cocoa or
Yeah.
the
Oh my
really,
gosh, those are so exhausting
they're
seeming.
so elaborate. Literally, we move him from 5 different places in rotation, but they love it. They love looking for him. And so, you know how most kids the night before Christmas, can't sleep because they're so excited because
Mhm.
Santa's coming or they get to open presents the next day or all the above. Well, my kids on Christmas Eve couldn't sleep because they were bawling their eyes out because they had to say goodbye to Cheeks
Oh my
Oh,
gosh.
because
no.
Cheeks goes back to the North Pole for the year on Christmas Eve and then comes back next December. And it was my oldest who was crying. She's been going through this really sentimental phase. And then my 3-year-old was just made herself cry and then eventually was crying for real because she copies her big sister. So we were like, okay, was not expecting this.
There was a TikTok video that a mom posted because it was going to be their last year with their elf. And so the elf wrote them a letter about the family they were going to go to next. And the kids were sobbing, not no, they had accepted it, but it
Yeah.
was
It was just an emotional goodbye.
got me emotional because I was like, these sweet little babies.
It's sentimental too. It's,
Yeah.
all these memories. Actually, at one point during dinner, my 6-year-old, she was like, Mommy, I really need to tell you something, but I can't say it in the house. I was like, okay. So we went out to the garage and she was like, Mommy, I don't think Santa's real.
Oh no.
She goes, but I didn't want to say it in the house because I think it would really upset Cheeks.
I love
That's
that she still
amazing.
believes in Cheeks.
I
She's like,
know.
Santa, not so sure.
But like, how messed up for Cheeks if he were to find out his whole job is a lie.
He's gonna have a crisis of faith here any minute.
Also, I feel like I'm
Deconstructing.
gonna have to like edit the video at the beginning to say like content warning, don't listen in the car if your
For
children.
sure.
Okay,
I didn't
who
know
at this
I
point would
didn't
have
know
their
we were gonna talk about Santa.
who at
I
this
like that you
point
don't
has
do
their
that for our
children
language, but you're gonna
No.
do that for the elf on the shelf.
or
Listen.
unicorns or
Listen.
soaking.
Okay, you're right.
I feel like everyone knows don't
it's
have
their
their
own
kids
fault
on
at
this.
this point. It's their
We
own
don't do elf on the shelf because the expectation of it was it seems so exhausting and involved to have to remember like when my kids go to bed, that's my me time. I don't have the energy. I still have to close up the kitchen and like do some kind of chore to make myself feel like a good human being.
Yeah.
And then I want to sit down and watch Law and Order for 3 hours while I scroll on my
Right.
phone. Like I don't want to elf on
I mean,
the shelf.
to be fair, all it takes is just remembering and then moving it to a spot. But there were several times where I was laying in bed at like midnight and being like, "Oh shoot, I forgot to move Cheeks."
jump
Well,
on
I
it.
more mean like the people who are super involved in like the ice battles between Elf on the Shelf and Elsa, you know? And it's such a crazy
no. I
intense
saw
thing.
that. I saw that what you're talking about. The ice.
Yes.
It's so elaborate. I have no energy for that. We are
I'm
very
not.
basic elf people.
So I was like, you know what? It's such a magical thing though. I want to do something like it. We also don't do Santa, so there's not really an onus to like behave for the elf. And so we did kindness gnomes, and this was years and years ago. And I was like, it'll be so much easier. They'll just have like a random act of kindness every day. And then I was like, that is also a lot of pressure. So I started moving it down to a couple times a week. And then I got really smart and I was like, I would write notes to my kids from the gnomes the night before. I have to be quiet because they can probably hear me and they still both believe in the gnomes. When I'd be like, if you want to do an act of kindness, you should clean your room for mom tomorrow. She would really like it.
That sounds like a great idea.
They love them. It's great. We do other fun stuff too.
See,
we
somebody
do
had
Christmas
to mute
talks
us because their kid walked into the room.
See? We got to get off this subject, you guys. We're about to ruin lives.
Yeah, we need to move on to the dirty
All
sex
I
stuff.
said was how were your holidays?
It is about time for April to start talking about masturbation. So
I can't believe we've made it 8 minutes. 8 minutes for what was it last time? I'm not the masturbation girl. I'm
just a girl who masturbates.
No, but I'm not the masturbation girl.
The masturbation girl. Oh, somebody said mute. I'm not hearing or seeing anything, just the chat. Everybody else can see and hear us, right? All right.
I think so.
I would assume so.
Lori, we've been talking and saying crazy stuff this whole time, man. All right.
Maybe if someone tell Lori to refresh her page. If she can't hear us, you can tell her in the chat, just say maybe refresh the page or like exit out of it and come back.
Katie, you're basically like our honorary assistant, so can you take care of that? Thank
you. Everyone can hear us.
Okay. Katie's like, cool. I don't actually work for you.
I would offer to send you a special prize for being our assistant, but we both know you won't get it for 6 months.
Maybe by the summer. Maybe by the summer.
For those of you that don't know, in our October episode, we had a contest and Katie won, and she was supposed to get a prize that she got at Christmas.
Hey, that's only a 2-month turnaround.
Yes,
bad.
but I mailed
Was
it out
really just 2 months?
after I mailed Caitlin her pride stickers that she asked for. So, you know.
Oh, that was the one that took a long time.
So,
New Year was good too. Everybody had a good New Year. We're back. Oh my gosh, tomorrow's February. It's been like a whole month of this New Year.
It's my birthday month, though.
I know.
Do you do birthday months? Because I know that Rachel and I are both birthday month people, where it's like the first of the month. I'm like, do you know what today is? And my husband's like, no, it's not. I'm like, it is. It's my birthday month.
Honestly, no. I mean, I don't really talk about it that much. I kind of have sad birthdays, except last year Rachel came to see me.
You have sad birthdays?
I just don't really do parties. Beecher threw me a surprise for my 30th, which was nice, and it was my first and only ever surprise party that I've had. And then they surprised me with Rachel coming in last year.
Yes, I
Caitlin
did.
is judging us hard.
I know
Apparently
because
tomorrow's not the first of the month.
listen, April, I'm gonna go back to your
30
birthday in
days,
1
half
second.
September, April, June,
But
and November.
so we always used our knuckles. So like if there's a knuckle, there's 31 days, and if there's not a knuckle, there's less than. So I should have known that because your first it goes like this: January, February, March, April, May. Nobody?
We do the
Okay.
rhyme. 30 days have September, April, June, and November. All the rest have 31, except for February, which has 28 and occasionally 29.
Caitlin knows I do the knuckle trick, and I messed up. Anyway, April, listen, or Abby, do you want to hear a fun story? Last year, you helped me trick April into thinking I was sick in bed.
I do remember.
What I wish you could have seen was when she opened the door and looked not happy at all that I
You
was
did
there.
inform me of that.
I just looked shocked. You just shocked me. And I don't like my shocked face is not happy and it's not upset either. It is just
I
shocked.
wasn't happy to see you, but I wasn't upset about it either.
Beecher and I were like, yay. And she was like,
I was like, oh, well, to be fair, if it makes you feel better, it was the exact same face I had when Beecher proposed.
oh, wow.
I'm not sure that's
Just like,
there's a lot to unpack there, for being honest. But
Is that
actually,
supposed to make me feel good or Beecher feel
Beecher, are you
poorly?
listening?
no, it's just my shocked face. I'm just
I would
genuine.
actually like to go backwards because the idea that you just said that like you don't have good birthdays, that is tragic
Awful.
to me.
It's really bad.
And I like listen, I am the orchestrator of my birthdays. I actually prefer to like my friends, their only job in my birthday scenario is you just say yes. Just say yes.
Same.
Because I know what I want to do and I know what's going to make me feel seen and loved. And that's going to be having my people with me doing this thing I want to do. Take control of your birthday.
Yeah, I need to do that. I'm still unpacking this, which actually probably flows really well into our topic tonight.
Thank God.
But just like, always being taught to like, my needs don't matter. Humble thyself, be selfless, don't make it about
Fuck
you.
that. I'm sorry if your kids are still around.
Joy,
Fuck
Jesus,
that.
others,
No.
then you.
In my house growing up, we had a special plate that you got to use on your birthday. And when we were younger, it was just special. And then as we got a little older, it became like this really weird family joke because the plate said, "Today you are special." And so as we got older, we were like, "So I'm not special other days? Like today? Oh no, it said today you are loved."
Oh, no. All of the other days.
All of the other days I'm not. So I really took it to heart. Like, today is my day. I get whatever I want. You all get to suck it up.
A few years ago, I like fake complained a little bit to my friends that I've never had a surprise party. And they were like, we've never been able to throw you one because you coordinate your entire birthday weeks in advance. Like, we know what we're doing. So how could we throw you a surprise party? I'm like, I guess that's fair. If you take the initiative, people can't surprise you with anything. That's the only
right. But then when you don't take it, then you're just regularly disappointed. Usually.
Yeah, for sure.
But not everybody likes surprises.
I do.
I see, and that's the thing. So Katie said, I need to do that. I just expect my people to do exactly what I want without me saying what I want, and it never works. And I always end up crying on my birthday. That was actually a therapy thing that I really had to unpack. That was like, you are allowed to express what you want from something. And it is actually not okay. I'm speaking for myself. I would never speak for you, Katie. That I had to learn that it wasn't okay for me to have silent expectations and then be upset with people when they did not know and like hold it over their, and I'm not saying you do this. I did this. Hold it over their head like, you clearly don't love me because you don't know me well enough to know that that's what I wanted. I used to say, if it's the thought that counts, then this still is bad because clearly you didn't think about me. Like, I was like an emotional terrorist. And I really had to unpack that, like, it's okay to have expectations, but the way to keep my expectations in line is to express those things and tell people like, hey, you mean a lot to me. I want you to celebrate with me. This is what I want it to look like. Thank you. Yeah, I was an emotional terrorist, Katie.
I feel like there's a segue here. I don't know exactly what it is, but I feel like there is one.
Well, the thing about being focused on Jesus, even at your birthdays, that's really, especially for women, in line with biblical values, biblical womanhood.
Oh, that phrase makes me want to throw bows, dude. Like, ugh.
I actually do think this is a decent segue because I do think that's part of how women are taught to behave in the church is like, don't have needs, don't
Yeah.
tell people what you need. Dear God, then you'll seem like you have them.
Right.
And it's such a weird thing to teach people, like subvert all your own natural needs and impulses. And there's a big resurgence of this traditional view of womanhood, and they have a fancy little hashtag for themselves. Look at it at your own risk.
At your own risk.
At your own risk. They're called Tradwives now.
Tell us all what that stands for, because I did not know.
It just stands for traditional.
Traditional. Yeah.
Trad sounds way cooler, though. It kind of reminds me of like the Try Guys with the Trad Gals.
The Tradwives.
But it's the group where somebody did on the... Was that the Try Guys?
You cut out for part of that for me, so I'm not sure what you asked.
I said, is that the group where somebody cheated on their wife?
I think so. Yes.
Yeah. I don't know.
I'm pretending like I don't know a lot about it, but like I actually know everything about it.
I feel like I know all of the details.
If you look up the Tradwives thing on any social media, what's crazy to me is that you will actually see there are so few posts actually discussing what it is independently. They're all just defending it to some unknown. They just assume that you're looking at it like you're mad at them. And so they all start with things like Tradwives aren't about being, obedient and subservient. They're about being submissive. And I'm like, when will Christian women learn that obedience and submission are not different, no matter how much you want them to be?
They definitely sold that they were. I remember hearing people say things like, submission isn't just doing what your husband says and they're always the one making the choice and they're ruling the house. It's more that when I know my husband is submitting to Christ, it's easy to submit to him because in reality, he's not leading our home. Jesus is.
Oh my God. Y'all seen that umbrella graphic where the top is Christ and then below is the husband and then it's the wife and then it's the children?
Yeah.
April, I don't know if you know this, but you actually bring up that umbrella a decent amount. I feel like
literally as soon as I said it, I feel like
so
oh no, I've had family members share that thing.
Oh
and the thing is, the woman that I know who shared this is a pastor's wife, and she is herself a narcissist. She doesn't know it. But she is not like a submissive woman at all. But she like plays one in church.
Yeah.
Isn't that funny? I feel like there are so many pastors' wives who give that vibe where they're like submissive woman. And you can tell in their marriage that they are in charge.
Yeah.
And do you guys remember My Big Fat Greek Wedding?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And she's like, we can't tell dad I want to go to college. The dad is the head of the house. And the mom's like, the husband is the head, but the woman is the neck and she can turn the head, whichever. I feel like that's how those pastor wives are. They're like, my husband is the head of the house, but I have all the control.
Right. And it's super manipulative.
Cringy to me. Yeah, that's super manipulative. And
I've also seen the people that are like, I'm like, well, I am for equality. Like men and women are equal. And they're like, so are we. Men and women are equal. They're just different. Like
different but equal.
Yeah, just because the woman is technically lesser than doesn't mean she's not equal to her husband.
She's good at some things that he's not good at, like the cooking and the cleaning and the raising babies. He's good at other things, like being in charge and making money.
And leading.
All of the things.
And leading and preaching.
There was this
the word of God
and being strong and
there
being
was this
better.
Facebook post that went around a few years ago, and everybody I knew was sharing it, like church people.
Is it the one with the boots?
I don't remember, were there boots in it?
I don't
It was
know.
more like people, women now want to do everything a man can
Oh.
do, but they should be doing what women, men can't do what women were created to do, which really just minimizes women to
Right.
like birthing children.
Oh, for
That's
sure.
they're like,
Don't
we're not
forget the
created to do
rearing.
everything.
We got to rear
Right.
those children.
Oh yeah, for sure. But it's like, why do you want to do everything a man can do when you can do things man can't do? Like
You're
what?
so special.
Having that's all we are. That's literally all we are.
There is such a deep intersection between turf shit and Tradwives,
Oh yeah.
where they only ever make the distinctions between men and women in like painful ways, where it's like women give birth with their vaginas. And I'm like, what? Do you hate yourself? Do you
Yeah.
hate being a woman? Because you only ever talk about it in like the hard women bear the curse of Eve. And I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Is there nothing to enjoy about being a woman that you're trying to gatekeep? No, you just want to gatekeep the hard stuff? That's
Yeah.
weird.
Rachel, I was thinking you were talking about that Facebook post. I think it went viral this last year. It was a bunch of girls like right after us. There was like a women's small group at a church. And as part of, they did like
Oh
an
my
exercise where they all brought in their husband's
Shoes.
boots,
Yeah, the boots.
like, or their husband's shoes. And they tried putting their husband's shoes on and walking
That wouldn't work.
around.
My feet are bigger than his.
And the whole point was like, the shoes were just bigger. Our feet didn't fill it all the way
My
up.
dainty feet just couldn't fit.
I know. And they're like, and just like it's not our job to wear our husband's shoes, we can't fill his roles.
Do you guys know the videos on TikTok where people will duet them to try to figure out if it's like covert kink videos or if it's actually just somebody being like they don't understand what they're doing? That sounds like covert kink, where they're like, why don't you slip your tiny lady foot into that big manly shoe?
I haven't seen my wide feet
covert
apparently.
kink shit.
Oh, it's so
It's
cringy.
so weird. When I was trying to show Rachel an account, I sent Rachel and April an account that I don't know. You know when you're on your Instagram like search feed and it just shows you stuff based on what you follow and like? I need to tighten that up because it showed me this post and I was like, what in the world is this? And so I sent the account to Rachel and April and I was like, here you go, content farm, because it is ridiculous. And one of the posts that they had up was like this huge long diatribe about how women attempting for equality actually ruins the world, which is, that's kind of an old song. But they were like, because it makes women think that what they contribute isn't good enough. Everything when you tell women that equality is that they could have the choice, what you're saying is they're not good enough with just what they do. And I'm like, what? That doesn't even make sense, because why is housework what women naturally do?
Right.
Why is that the assumption that it's the natural
Speak
bent?
for yourself. When I was born, I was like, my first word was broom.
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 But really, it was actually vroom. She just couldn't form her B's.
No, really it was zzz for my vibrator.
Oh.
Just kidding.
And we're back on masturbation.
Just kidding. I had to deconstruct it.
Traditional wives don't do that. They lay there and let their husbands get off like a good wife.
Like a good wife would do.
No, because their pleasure doesn't matter, which is one thing I was never taught about growing up. I remember being a girl, like 12, going to a women's event because my mom was the pastor's wife, so I had to go to all these things. And I don't remember who was talking, but talking about like marriage and the importance of a woman, of a wife, to make sure her husband is satisfied. That narrative was pushed over and over and over again. And I never one time heard anything about a husband satisfying his wife.
Well, even if they said it, you wouldn't know because you're not allowed to listen to the men talk.
Right.
Jeez, April. There was like a special phrasing for it, and there was someone who I love deeply in my life who has said this phrase to me when I was discussing a hard season of our lives with them. With Aaron, he was going through a really hard thing at work, and this person said to me, "Are you making yourself available to him?" And I was like, "What?"
Oh my gosh.
Fix it, Jesus.
Right.
What? Why is, and this is a person who my whole growing up had great spiritual influence on me. And this is really part of what their framework of belief was around biblical womanhood. That part of your obligation to your husband was that when your husband was struggling, it was your job to have extra sex with them so that
Ugh.
their burden would be eased. And I was like, I no, don't what? I don't want to talk about this.
What about your burden?
What about my burden?
Right. What about your burden, a wife's burden after even a stay-at-home mom, a stay-at-home wife, after all the things she's supposed to do all day? What about her burden at that point? Like she's not tired after running a household
Rachel, stay-at-home
all
wives
day?
aren't persons. That would have been funnier
Person.
if I could have said it.
It was
better.
still funny. I laughed. I giggled. I think about like,
Rachel, you go
sorry.
ahead.
No, I was
Well,
gonna
say you.
say my sister, I know, sorry. My sister is a stay-at-home mom. The boys are 5 but they're not full day. Like they're at school 4 days a week for like 3 hours, whatever. And she's starting to look at like getting back in to career world when they're full time next year because she wants to. Because the last 5 years, 6 years, because she, being pregnant with twins, she didn't work a big chunk of that, has been rewarding, she'd tell you, but also fucking hard.
Yeah.
Mhm.
She works her ass off. Keeping a house
Yeah.
with 5 people and 2 little boys that are like nonstop. They didn't sleep for like the first 3 years.
Well,
Like nonstop.
there's so much pressure around it, especially growing up in a church setting
Yeah.
where like your whole, if a girl goes to college, which I did go to college, but there's always this joke of like girls only go to college to get their MRS degree,
Mhm.
to get married and then to have children, like which is a quote unquote true woman's calling.
Mm.
And like, but like if you're taught this narrative your entire life that your goal as a wife, like your God-given purpose as a woman is to bear children, and then you finally do bear children if you do, and it's not everything you thought it was going to be. It's really hard and you lose your own identity. I think Abby, you talked about this earlier too. It's like suddenly your whole identity becomes being a mom, and then there's all this guilt of this is my purpose. I should be enjoying this. Like if you have any negative thoughts about this is hard, I don't like this. I want to have friends. I'd like a little bit of independence. Like anything, you just have all of this guilt around feeling it like you're abnormal because you're supposed to just love it. And you're supposed to love
It's
everything about
supposed to
it.
fulfill you.
Right. Right. And then if it doesn't and you feel like you do need more outside of just staying home, then you are a bad woman.
But I actually think that that is sort of the narrative of biblical womanhood that gets pushed from churches, not just about motherhood, but also about marriage. A woman's job is 2 things: get married, have babies, and those things will fulfill you and bring you purpose. I think about that one woman, I haven't seen her in a long time, but she was on TikTok. She was like traditionally attractive and probably in her late 40s, maybe mid 40s. And she was constantly posting videos of her like preening in front of the camera with just text on the screen that was like,
Oh
do you know who
gosh.
I'm talking? I can't think of her name anymore, but
Teresa was her name, and I wanted to
she was
throat
the
punch her.
fucking word. She was like, if you're not having sex with your husband, he will leave you and that will be your fault. I'm not even making it up. Like this is like the kind of shit that she would put out there. And people, rightly so, would stitch and duet and like rip her to shreds. But she had easily 200,000 followers,
Easy. Yeah.
most of which were probably men or desperate women trying to understand, like, well, she looks happy and clearly her marriage is good. So, like, how do I get that? And what I want to be like is, oh, it's super easy. Throw away everything about yourself, devote yourself entirely to not just your husband, but to what he likes and what he wants at any given moment. And then have his babies and also devote yourself to them and what they like and what they want at every given moment, all the while preparing your daughter that she can have likes and wants right now. But once she gets married, she's got to throw all of it away. And I know so many Christian women who get into their 30s and they're married and they have kids and they're like, I don't know who I am. I don't know what I like. I don't know what I want. I'm not happy, but I don't even know what's going to make me happy because I don't know who I am anymore.
Yeah.
That's my soapbox.
No, I think it's a frequently seen experience, and the more women feel the boldness to share that, because I think, like April, you noted, like if you express any displeasure with your experience as a wife and mother, that there's a lot of shame in that, right?
Yeah.
So I think the more women are saying, like, I love my kids, but I lost myself, maybe that's ending that stigma, or kind of hoping to, that we can be like, you can actually like not dedicate every second of your entire day to being a mother, because you're not just a mother.
Right. Well, and then also there's plenty of women who are not mothers at all, and that
Yeah.
doesn't make them any less of a woman.
Yeah, like when you say, like, oh, you're supposed to do two things: get married and have babies. I got a giant fucking F in that so far.
Rachel, what we're actually here to do is tell you about how you are failing at biblical womanhood.
I
This is an
am
intervention.
the worst biblical woman ever.
I think you might be able to
Ever.
make it up though if you join an MLM.
Ooh.
Oh, see, I
Start selling
could.
leggings and essential oils, and then you can get back in the good graces.
Okay, but what if I joined OnlyFans instead?
No.
Do
Okay. She said no.
genuinely though, Rachel, do you feel like did you have to deconstruct at all that pushing of biblical womanhood for yourself when you realize, like, that's not my journey right now, and I don't know what that will look like or if it'll ever be my journey?
Yes, and mine was probably a little different than some of like the people I even know who wanted that, or were more open to that, more expectant of that in their lives, and it didn't happen. Than me, who has never necessarily had a very maternal longing. I wasn't a teenager wanting to be a mother, but I was a teenager who thought she would be a mother, which is really interesting because I didn't like long to be a mom one day. I just, like we've talked about, thought I'm probably going to have some man's kids one day. Like, even though it's not what I wanted to do. And I did have to, just because, listen, there's a lot of talk, there always has been in the last few years, about mom shaming, which is obviously a very, very real thing. I understand that. What doesn't get talked about quite as much is non-mom shaming. And my mom friends sometimes are probably not very cognizant of the things they say, that are just like, ooh, like just right in the chest and turning that knife. It's a completely different lived experience. It's not a lesser lived experience. And that has definitely been something to deconstruct, not necessarily just from the evangelical frame, like, but also just American woman in the world. But yeah, that is not my story, but it's not a lesser I'm not behind in the game. I think for a long time there was like, okay, well, I've had friends that were like, I'm 27, I'm not married yet. I'm 30, I'm not married yet. So I'm behind the game. What game? Like, what are you behind in?
Right. Who's
Like,
keeping score?
who's
Like,
keeping
what?
score?
Right.
How do I find mine out?
I saw someone, I don't know if it was a tweet or a video, I can't remember where I saw it, but someone was just saying how, a lot of times they, evangelicals use the verse, be fruitful and multiply, to convince everyone that they need to reproduce. But the person was like, when that verse was written down, there was like 100 people on the earth. Like, we multiplied, we were fruitful, like we've got
Maybe
a
a little
billion.
too fruitful.
Yeah, like I think we did the job.
Where's the Bible verse that's like, take a parenting class before you procreate?
Right.
Yeah. I wish.
I wish too. But I feel like for all of that all of that pushing of biblical womanhood and being a mother and all of that, we actually don't focus on what it would look like in the church to raise children well. Everything I've learned about being a good parent, I learned outside of church, every single thing. And I'm not saying there are no such things as good parents within the church. What I'm saying is every piece of parenting advice I received from church leadership was fucking bullshit.
Yeah. Yeah. Jennifer mentioned over here quiver full over, and you got, if for those of you listening, she put the sick face, the emoji, which, okay, I'm going to tell this story. I never know who's listening, and I never know who listens to my podcast. Right. And I've said this before, I've always walk a very fine line when it comes to my pastor as an adult, but he went with me and my boyfriend to get tattoos one day. And he got this tattoo of arrows representing his 5 children on his arm. like
I
shooting out
had a
whatever.
Pastor in Virginia who
wait.
literally
I want to
got.
hear the rest of the
I
story.
know,
But
but I
did
just
this,
have to say, also has arrow tattoos of their children.
of course,
Yeah.
right? And at the time I was like, oh, that's so spiritual, whatever. But Jennifer saying that made me think of it, because that mindset that his 5 children were his arrows to be used in the world, that those were his ownership, that was his legacy, that they were not 5 whole functional human beings that have their own goddamn story, that have their own reason to be here, and they're going to do their own things in life. They're still like teenagers now. No, it was all about him. Whatever they do with their life is about him.
Mm-hmm.
And their mother, who raises them, prepares them for that, right? Like at the end, it's all so patriarchal that like, and my house wasn't really like that necessarily, but I felt like my family was maybe the exception to the rule. Like at
Isn't
our
that
church.
weird?
What?
That like individually, because I agree. I don't feel like my house was specifically like that, but we were still in the church and in the church culture. I
Yeah.
still say things to my dad that I'm like, well, I learned this in church. And he's like, not from me. And I was like, well, guess what? You weren't the only pastor that you exposed me to.
Yeah. Same thing with me too. My parents actually weren't like, my parents' relationship was still pretty traditional, but they didn't teach me that. My dad actually taught me very feminist things when it came to me.
Nice.
And was like my dad told me to make sure I go out and get a career first before I get married, so I don't play second fiddle to a man.
That's amazing.
That was what my dad told me before I was 10. But I
Did
still
he
grew
say
up
second fiddle? Because I really
I love him
say
for
second
that.
fiddle. That was his exact words. But I grew up in evangelical culture in all these churches. My dad was the pastor. He didn't personally believe that with me, but everyone else around us was still pushing the same traditional stuff. So I grew up, even though I was hearing this thing from my dad, still grew up having to unlearn all of that internalized misogyny.
And do you feel like, so April and I come from pretty similar backgrounds, and I feel very similarly, but also recognize that while my dad was saying those things to me, he wasn't saying those same things from the pulpit.
Oh.
And so I was receiving that messaging on a personal level. And my dad wasn't exactly at the pulpit being like, women submit to your husbands, but he wasn't combating that messaging either.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Same
I feel
here.
so like I've had this conversation with him where I'm like, I understand that I didn't learn that from you, but I also, you didn't refute it from the pulpit. So like, yes, but that just made me feel like I was better than other women. It didn't make me feel like you felt differently about women in general.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just felt like I, as your daughter, had special privileges, not that you had a different expectation for women and men in the church.
I don't know if you felt this way, Abby, and maybe Rachel too, but I grew up, I was a little bit of at the time we called it tomboys. I don't know if we still use that phrase anymore, but I was like a quote unquote boyish girl. Like I played sports, I did all the things. Like people called me a tomboy. I didn't like label that myself.
I think it's okay if you identify like I was a tom. I think that's okay.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know. I've read somewhere that was bad now, but I didn't know how else to say it. Anyway, what was I saying? Growing up, I, especially like once I got into high school, did not want to have girlfriends, really. Like I had this idea that girls were dramatic and girls were
we were all that girl.
I was like a guy's girl.
Yeah.
I wasn't a
all
girl's
my best
girl.
friends were guys. Their girlfriends all hated me.
Me.
I recently reconnected with a guy friend of mine from high school after he got divorced from a girl that hated me. And I'm like, I'm too old for this now. Thanks.
But am I?
Is your ex-wife okay? I'm gonna go check on her.
Yeah, I felt like I had this internalized misogyny that I believed all these negative stereotypes about women. I knew I was not that way, and I connected with other girls who would say the same things of like, oh yeah, we don't like girls. Like I was a girl who didn't like girls because I was more like, I was chill and I was one of the
not
guys.
like other girls. Like
you took it even like I never said I don't like girls. I always said girls don't like me.
Oh, yes.
Mm.
Yes, that was
I,
me.
it was never that I didn't like them. I'm a cool
Yeah, you
girl.
didn't
I'm a
I'm
chill
yeah,
girl. I'm
super
easy to get
cool.
along with. I'm so relaxed. I can hang out with guys and we're totally fine. There's no drama. We're all just joking around. But then another girl comes along and she's all uptight and she's intimidated by me. It was always that. She's just really intimidated by me.
We were
Oh
the
my
same people,
God.
weren't we?
And
We really were.
I feel bad for that version of myself. I
Mhm.
once wrote a letter to my daughter about female friendship that I'm going to give her when she's in middle school or something.
Mhm.
And in that letter, one of the things that I say is don't cheat yourself out of female friendship because you think that you are better than other people or you
Mhm.
think you are. Because I look back at that time and I can recognize now that there were girls who tried to be my friend and I was a fucking bitch about it because I
Yeah.
didn't know how not to be.
But that was also imposed on us,
Absolutely.
right? Like,
That's
that
why
was
I feel
taught to
bad for
us.
that version of
Yeah.
myself. Like I feel sad for her and I wish I could go
Yeah.
back and be like, babe.
I think it was a way for me to like almost like I was rebelling against what was expected of me. Like if I put on this more masculine role and I'm like cool and I'm not like those other girls,
Mhm.
then no one's going to expect me to grow up and be this submissive wife. You know, but it was like I had like I did not know that women could like there were all types of women in my head. Like women were supposed to be like this, and since I was not like that, it was like, well, I'm just not like a woman. I'm like a man. When in reality, I was still a woman. I just
Mhm.
liked these things, but society didn't say that women could like these things.
Yeah.
Because, gender norms were like, everything was just so gendered. Everything was.
Yeah, in a binary, and there was
Yeah.
no
April, did
nuance
you
there.
ever dip back into being like, I need to get myself in line with what the Bible and I don't know, I don't even know if I mean that you literally, but did you ever find yourself dipping backwards into like, oh, I need to do the things that biblical women do?
Yeah, I would say I did that more after my dad died. So I was like 23, I just graduated college, and I felt there was like this piece of me that thought God didn't heal my dad of cancer to like wake me up and put me back on the right track. Yeah.
I
Anyway,
already know that, but every time I hear you say that, it like literally makes me want to like burst into tears for you, for
yeah,
23-year-old
it was
you.
awful.
I hate
So
that so much.
Oh, I'm sorry. Paige's comment, I'm horrified. In youth group growing up, our pastor would tell the girls to, quote, practice their wife skills and clean up after every event.
oh my gosh, I hate that so much.
I
I'm
literally
so sorry
hate
to
him.
interrupt here.
And if you want to send me his name, I'll
I know.
expose the hell out of him.
Rachel will
on
decimate him on the
TikTok.
internet.
Sorry, April. Go back.
Oh no, it's fine. So I literally before I dated Beecher, which Beecher being non-binary, of course, didn't know it at the time, totally threw my gendered ideas out the window. But I dated a firefighter who was like the typical macho man, and I was
So
like, okay, I
manly.
can submit to this man. It
How
drove
many
me.
jokes did people make about your red hair and him being a firefighter? Were people like,
I don't remember.
none?
We only dated like 2 months, and it was long distance, so we weren't together that often. And then I dated the guy from the power team
Right. Remember
right
that.
after
Remember
that. So I like went for these like really like masculine men that that like they were like wanted to protect me, and I
Mhm.
hated it. I hated it so much. I was like, no, I can't do this. But then when Beecher and I got married, Abby, are you wanting to say something? Because I see your
No,
face.
no. I'm just checking to
She
make
can't
sure
help but
Rachel took a picture, right? You took a picture.
her
You got
her face shows everything.
Okay.
Sorry, for those of you listening, I do have the name of this person. So if you
Mm.
And the
tune
name of
into
their
my
podcast.
TikTok, you might hear me say the name Nathan somewhat soon. Anyway, April, so sorry. Carry on.
Anyway, the biggest time where I tried to make myself this good traditional wife was when Beecher and I first got married, because my mom and my mother-in-law were both very traditional wives. My mother-in-law still is because she still has a husband who's still alive. And I just remember like I felt this pressure to have a clean house and to host and to cook. And like it was a really big point of contention early on for Beecher and I, especially because Beecher naturally had a little more feminine characteristics, is what society would call feminine, and I had more masculine ones.
Mm.
But we were like forcing ourselves to fit what didn't come natural for us. Like I tried to cook and I don't like cooking and I'm naturally not that good at it. Beecher is an amazing chef and enjoys cooking. And so early on, it would be kind of like 50-50. And then like, Beecher's family sometimes would be like, why are you cooking? And like made a big deal about it and made us feel like
Of all the gender, like we all have to eat. What a weird,
like shamed us for it. And then I felt bad. And we were both really involved with this church. It ended up being kind of culty. And then I remember there's one time and I like, it's so cringy thinking back on it now, but I had lunch with a friend who we were both on the worship team at this church, and I really didn't like small group, and I was complaining because at this church, to volunteer for which you did not get paid, you were considered leadership, and to be in leadership, you had to go to a small group. It was like mandatory. And anyway, it's a long story, but I was just complaining to her how much I hated this small group because, which is a whole other story. And she looks at me and I was like, but Beecher really wants to go and like wants to host it and blah, blah, blah. She was like, April, Beecher's her husband. I was like, yeah. And she goes, and you know what the Bible says? If he wants to do it, of course, back then, Beecher was fully identifying as the husband role. Yeah. She's like, you got to submit. That's just what God wants. And I went, oh, you're so right. Like I did that. And I was like cringing and dying on the inside. And then I went back home and it like killed me. I was like, okay, Beecher, we can host this small group. And it worked for like a week. And then I was right back to be like, I hate this small group. There was literally a dude in there who was like such a misogynist. And I just wanted to like punch him.
I hope you did.
I did
Can
not.
Rachel for you? Cause
yeah, I would do it for you.
I had like the opposite problem where I had to reconvince myself that it was okay that I liked traditionally feminine seeming things. And I'm still in it. Like I love dresses and I just really struggle wearing them, but I love them. But every time I put one on, I'm like, people are going to think I'm a girl. And I'm like, I am a girl. I identify as a woman. Like I don't struggle with it, but I deconstructed. I started deconstructing in like 2010, I think. And so the pendulum swung so far that now I've got to pull it backwards and be like, it's okay to like what you like. And if some of those fall, like if you like church, go to church. If you like wearing skirts, wear a skirt. If you want to wear an apron, wear a fucking apron.
Yeah. I do think that is something that comes up from the Tradwife side of things. And that is they're like, they've demonized motherhood and homemaking and stuff. I'm like, not intentionally. And I'm not saying that there weren't people that have done that. But the idea that a woman has a choice to be who she wants to be includes being a mother and a wife and someone who stays at home and someone that bakes bread from scratch. If that's what gets you off, do it.
Right.
Like it's about having the choice to be that person, or even a choice to balance that role as a mother, especially, I think, to be able to like, I have some friends, I hope they don't listen to this. I have a really good friend who, when we invite her out to do something, she says, let me see if he can watch the kids. And it makes me want to come through the phone and like strangle her because I'm like, he's not a babysitter. He's their father.
They're half his.
He's their father. And I'm like, so just like, not that she can't stay at home like she does and be happy, but that she can also have an identity a few hours out of the week of doing her own thing.
I would say I've used that phrase just out of habit, just because that's how people use it. But now, like, I've intentionally tried to be like, let me check Beecher's schedule, to see if Beecher can be home, to do the flippy thing.
I had lunch with a friend yesterday and we had this whole conversation about how as an adult woman, the majority of adult women are married with children, and it becomes harder to have female relationships that are not about kids because even when they're not in charge of their kids, they're still in charge of their kids. And she was like talking about how like my husband didn't text me the entire time I was out, and God love him for it. But she was talking about how she has friends who, even if they make it out of the house, the husband is texting them every 5 minutes. Like, where are the child's pajamas? What should I feed them for dinner? They have, they're crying. What do I do? Like, there's no space for that person to be a person. And one of the things that I also think this is kind of contributes to that is that kids, there's a reason that you can't diagnose a child as a sociopath, because they're just all sociopaths. Their brains aren't fully formed enough yet to develop empathy and awareness of people around them. And one of the things I say to my children all the time is, if I feel like, well, not all the time, but if I feel like they've crossed a line where they're treating me in a way that I would not accept being treated like that from a person in my life, I say to them, you guys, I'm a person, and I want to help you, and I want to do what I can to make your life as good as it can be. But I'm a person, and how you treat me matters, because I am also a person. Like, I want to humanize myself for them so that they grow up understanding that every person is a person. It doesn't matter what their relationship to you is. Your life is about you, but their life isn't about you. And that's a really hard line to draw for women and mothers. I say mothers, but I actually really believe women, because women in the church are treated like that their life is about what they can do to serve other people. If I believed in the Enneagram, this is where I would talk about how all women type 2 before they type anything else.
I mean, I didn't, but okay, it's fine.
What was your first Enneagram read?
3. I've always been a 3.
I see that so hard.
I honestly don't know enough about it, but when I first took a little quiz or whatever, I was a 2. And then but 8 was like a really close second. And then I took it again and it was an 8. And I was like, I really think, well, I don't really know what exactly I am, but I feel like I answer questions based on how I feel like a good woman should, you know? And I don't like, that's something I've had to be aware of it. Like, am I answering this because I am actually like this, or because I think I should be like this?
That's trauma.
Yeah.
That's trauma.
Abby, what you just said when you kind of hesitated and you were like, no, I want to say women, not necessarily mothers. Would the church do that? I think absolutely women, because where I think the church maybe teaches that specific to mothers in the home, in the church, they prey on non-mothers even more so, because they're like, look, you have all of this time and money, and which, no, I don't, and all this stuff. So why aren't you pouring into here at church? So like the way that I have been used as a woman with no children and no husband when I was in the church, looking back, was so absolutely unacceptable. So, and it was like they were telling us, because you have no responsibility,
and they blame it on Paul.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's definitely that bastard's
Rachel,
fault.
you're actually the most biblical woman among us now that we're thinking about it, because you are a new church, first church. There we go. You're a first church biblical woman.
Yeah.
A woman with no financial responsibilities because you don't have kids. And so like, what financial responsibilities could you possibly have if you don't have children? So you can devote all your time and money to the church.
Yeah, for
the
sure.
Unpaid labor force that props up the church is women. Churches today would not exist without the unpaid labor force of women. 100%. And that unpaid labor force wouldn't exist without the spiritual manipulation that tells women that that is their job. Their job is to serve.
Mm-hmm. The church I was at as an adult, we're getting real. Towards the end, there was like 5 or 6 men full-time on staff, and one woman who was in that office more hours a day, 5 days a week than any of those men, running the children's ministry, was a children's pastor, whatever. And she did not make $1. And they were all full salaried, and they couldn't find any money to pay her. The wife of one of the elders started sending her checks in the mail out of like her own goodness to do it, to pay her. Oh, this is making me so mad. I forgot about these people. And I feel bad kind of telling their stories. But like, looking back on that, how do they rationalize that?
Yeah.
How?
With Paul, with the New Testament, because the New Testament church was completely funded by women like Phoebe and Junia, who had money because they were business. Queen. They had lived. This is what's crazy. From a completely scriptural standpoint, they lived the Proverbs 31 life which includes bringing in income.
Yeah.
Right. In Proverbs 31, we talk about the income that she brought in through her clothes. And if you look, it literally talks about through the linens that she dyes. And what was Phoebe? She was a woman who dyed cloth purple, which was the richest color you could get. It's like this thorough line that says,
I love it.
if you live like a biblical woman, you will reap your reward, and your reward will be that you will be financially responsible for your local church as an old woman.
Interesting.
Ugh.
What?
Yeah.
I don't want that reward.
No, that does not sound like a reward.
No.
Oh my gosh.
Well, the thing is, speaking of older Christian women, we are actually not qualified to understand biblical womanhood.
No, we're all peasants.
Yeah, we need to be, because we're still young.
Floozies.
Still
Would one say we should be transformed?
and we need someone to teach us about it. It was so smooth until you started doing that.
Segue.
For those of you just tuning into the podcast, I am awful at segues, and I am running the show tonight. So
speaking of
Speaking of a segue.
Speaking of the title of our show, which is Biblical Womanhood tonight, this other thing about biblical womanhood.
So April,
tell us a little bit
yeah.
about the leading authority on the internet about biblical womanhood.
Y'all are going to pay attention to this because this woman knows lots of things.
I would love to tell you about the transformed wife. Her name is Lori Alexander, and she teaches women, specifically wives, the transformed wife, on how to be a godly wife. She has said things such as that she believes women's suffrage was the downfall of American society.
Oh, gosh.
She believes in household voting, that a wife should vote how her husband tells her to.
Yep.
A lot of her tweets are bonkers.
Bonkers.
She, a little bit about her. I'm on her website right now. That is Lori. She's
Not
been
to
married
be confused with the Lori in our comments.
Who we love.
Lori Alexander, the transformed wife. She's been married to Ken since the 1980s. They have 4 grown and married children
who are probably not perpetuating more generational trauma on their kids for sure.
Says
they're grown and they're married, so that's the mark of success.
4 grown and married children who all walk in truth. That's what she said. They've been blessed with 9 grandchildren so far. You know, that
quiver still
never
has
stops.
some arrows.
Yeah. They're still popping out, them babies.
Oh, gosh.
She has chosen the title The Transformed Wife because God, through his Holy Spirit and Word, has transformed and will continue to transform her into the godly woman she's been called to be. Ken and I had 23 years of a difficult marriage. Oh, and she talks about how she used to not submit, and they had a difficult marriage.
And now she submits, and everything's good.
Weird.
Yeah, since she stopped having an opinion, life's been more peaceful. Her ministry is based upon Titus 2:3-5, in which God commands the older women teach younger women to be sober, love and obey their husbands, love their children, blah 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 blah.
Yeah,
blah,
thanks.
Blah. Anyway, that is the transformed wife.
Do we have a video?
We do. I do want to, before I show this video, I went to go see a current thing that she said, and I saw this little snippet from a video where she was like, "It's not hard, ladies. When your husband asks you to do something, do it immediately." And I'm like, oh, I hate you so much. How old is she, Lori? I don't know. What do you think? She's like 60s?
I think so.
They've been married since 1980. She probably got, I don't know.
So probably 60s.
Yeah,
my parents married in
60s.
80. Yeah. All right, let's watch this video of Lori, and April's actually reacting to it in this. So here we go.
Husband wants his wife to vaccinate, and she feels all of the things I mentioned previously, that it would be sinful for her to take it because she believes that they're completely wrong and harmful. This is my own opinion about that. I would say no, she wouldn't need to take it. And the reason I say that is because I tell women that they do not have to have anal sex with their husbands because that's harmful. They don't need to submit to things that are harmful to them.
That
so, by the
came
way,
out of nowhere.
So just so you know, the question was, which I should have prefaced this. someone asked her, as young wives do, asked her a question if her husband wanted her to get the COVID vaccine, if she would have to submit to that because she didn't want the COVID vaccine. And that was her answer.
And
that
her
no.
answer was, well, we should look to the anal sex example for this, I think.
It's so odd to me
So weird.
that like one of them is you choosing something about your own body, and the other one is an issue of consent of your own body. But like
I also love, isn't it crazy? This is not what this podcast is about, but
No.
I just want to,
But-
there's mentioning. I think that
April,
it is
go
so
home.
wild to me. I think that it is so wild to me that Christians, evangelical Christians, were like, any pre-existing rule they had, if you put it up against taking the COVID vaccine, they were like, well, actually, like if somebody had asked her, what if my husband told me to murder somebody or take the COVID vaccine? You know, she would have been like, well, if your husband told you to murder them,
they
he
must have
probably
deserved it.
had
And
a reason that you just aren't, it wasn't your time to understand or know.
that is how
It's like,
bad
Yeah,
the vaccine is.
any like biblical mandate, they were like, COVID undoes that.
Yeah.
So earlier today, I took some tweets from the transformed wife and I turned them into Mad Libs and I asked the girls, I said, hey, give me a noun, give me an adjective, give me a verb, give me a whatever. And so now I'm going to read to you a couple new and improved tweets on biblical womanhood. Ready?
Oh, sure.
I'm going to work really hard to get through this. This is the
Okay.
first that Rachel and April are hearing these tweets.
Yeah, we haven't heard them at all.
Most teenage girls lick with guys because they want to feel tiny and fiery. They slowly believe it's the way to get the guy. This is why girls need gorgeous, easy fathers and mothers who eat truth into their lives. This protects them from assless chaps and crying.
That probably honestly makes as much sense as some of her
It
tweets.
probably does. I don't know what she actually said, but I like my version better.
April and Rachel were like, well, are you going to read the real ones first so they know which words you replace? I was like, oh, they're going to know.
They're gonna know.
They're going to know. Many wives, many wives will manipulate their husbands into going to Buffalo Wild Wings. And it's often a female busboy. They want the busboy to pet their husbands. I tried this. Women need bulging, biting women, teaching them biblical womanhood and how to be a gigantic, arousing wife instead.
Wow, that actually flowed pretty
That
well.
one actually did. There's a female busboy.
We call him a bus girl.
Oh,
I'm
gosh.
probably going to tweet that later, honestly.
You
First
need
of
to
all,
do it
who
side
doesn't
by
love
side with
Buffalo Wild
hers.
Wings?
Like,
Yeah.
make hers. If you could like Photoshop it, have her actual screenshot of a tweet, and then just like blank space over the where it actually goes.
And then
Would
you
be
can have
funny.
a vote. Do a poll on Twitter. Which one's better? Which of
one's
these
better?
tweets is better?
Many women no longer know how to dribble. They don't know how to keep a cucumber moist and forbidden.
Oh, Lord.
They don't want rocking chairs. They don't know how to castrate clumsily. They only know what Marxism has taught them. The future is basketball. And live for oneself. This is not marriage material.
Future is basketball.
The future is basketball is honestly my favorite line in all of them. And I don't know why. The
It's
moist
funny.
forbidden cucumber should be my favorite, but it's the future is basketball.
I want to know what the future was according to Lori.
It was that feminism had taught women that the future is female.
Yeah, it is.
But it's not, it's basketball.
Okay, I'm stand corrected. Joe said he's literally crying at assless chaps. I wrote that because I didn't know how it was going to fit in, but I knew I needed assless chaps to be part of this conversation. One more, right?
One more.
Okay.
Women's Bible studies should be a kicking of women, preferably meeting in dildos, where the spicy feral women are harassing the edible women.
all about biblical womanhood. Think how much more ghastly the churches would be if this was happening. Elastic marriages, slippery children.
That is a fucking small group I would go to.
Minus the kicking of women. Like,
I mean,
What?
unless you're into it. I don't. But there was eaten women. What did it say?
There were edible women too.
Edible.
Yes,
we
yes.
were the spicy feral women are
Mm.
harassing the edible women.
Oh.
All about
The
biblical womanhood.
snacky ones.
Yeah.
They're the ones with the moist forbidden cucumbers.
Oh,
Yeah.
listen. Moist forbidden cucumbers. I'm all about it.
Mm.
Oh.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my goch. And they
were
probably
great.
those 4 tweets probably make more sense than Lori's did. All 4 of them make more sense than hers.
Wow.
Oh man. I don't know. I don't know if I really believe it's a resurgence in that, like, the church as a whole is going to come back to this, or if this is more fringe, but it still makes me sad for anybody that's under that teaching that thinks that this is what they need to be.
It does. Me too.
Yeah.
Well, and like Abby had mentioned earlier too, maybe they are fringe,
Mhm.
but I don't see mainstream evangelicals for the most part like calling it out either.
Right.
And or at least saying like women can be and do whatever they want. Like you just don't see that often
It's
unless
crazy.
they're progressive. Unless they're
As
progressive.
much shit as like Beth Moore gets, and they're like, we're just trying to protect the women. And I'm like, protect them from this.
Right.
This is
Right.
harmful.
Right. So every once in a while, depending on the series or whatever, my pastor's wife would sit on stage with him and they would speak together that week, you know.
Because really, she was preaching, but she couldn't preach.
She couldn't,
Right.
he needed
She
to
was
be up
giving
there.
a speech.
We had that too every Mother's Day.
Yeah. I do remember
Mhm.
though, once they were talking, you know, marriage relationships, whatever. And we were probably like, I would say like in the middle in terms of being like traditional and progressive, like definitely not like the old school church we grew up in, but theologically probably still pretty conservative. And I remember her saying, and he, you know, he made sure not to like say things that were offensive to people. She's not a speaker. So I remember she kind of was just like, started shitting on feminism in this. And I was like dying inside a little bit.
Yeah.
And then I had a conversation with him after it because I was like, it felt really unnecessary to me because it was like, you guys, it's not a bad thing. And he's like, I just, you know, Jesus defines me. Like, I don't need to identify as a feminist. I'm like, what? You don't need to identify as anything besides Jesus. And if that's how you feel, but you do, you identify as a lot of things. And I tried to share.
Patriot. He's a
Right.
patriot.
I shared with him and he was like, oh, that's interesting. I'll think about it. But the quote from Sarah Bessey from Jesus Feminist, which is, I don't necessarily need to identify as a feminist. I can identify as a Christian, but until being a Christian is synonymous with caring about all the shit that it doesn't, you can call me a feminist too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's where like biblical womanhood, there are attributes of women described in the Bible that are not bad, right?
Right.
Like they're not wholly bad. But until that's until you can look at a Christian woman and see the woman I want to be, then I don't need to identify as that biblical womanhood unless she gives a shit about all of this and at least she has the rights for all of this.
Right.
If it looks like Lori, the transformed wife, I don't need anything to do with it.
They also just have such a negative and ignorant idea of what being a feminist
Right.
is. It's like they think feminists are like all hate men and want to take over and
Wait,
like
we don't? Is that
mean,
not part of? Is that not?
you know what I mean? But it's like instead of wanting equality, it's like they think women just want to take over and like men are stupid and they just want to put heels on top of men's heads and pop them.
Which the interesting point when people say things like that is, why does that scare you? If because people say they don't want equality, they want role reversal. That stuff comes up with race relations and, you know, Well, why does that scare you? Oh, because you wouldn't want to trade places?
You don't want to give up
Yeah.
your power and privilege. You're a little afraid of
Right.
that.
Because you understand that you've had the power dynamic you're like since the beginning of time. Interesting observation. Way to tell on yourselves. Way
I
to
think
tell on
one
yourselves.
of the most interesting depictions of biblical womanhood and the way that it's been twisted is Mary and Martha. Because the story that
Woo!
we've all heard 1,000 times is that Mary was sitting at the feet of Jesus, listening to him teach, and Martha was working in the kitchen, which you would think would be good, but in reality, it was bad, and she shouldn't have been doing it.
Having a Mary spirit in a Martha world, is that what it's
It's a
called?
Mary heart.
Oh, I'm sorry, a Mary.
Oh,
And it was
gosh.
because Mary was she was sitting, and what's crazy is textually Scripture doesn't support that interpretation.
No.
The interpretation that Scripture supports is that Mary and Martha were both leaders in the church. They were both disciples in the church. And Mary was discipling and leading far from home. And when Martha met Jesus at the city gates, which is something only a leader of the city would have done and a leader of the church would have done, she complained to Jesus, like, why is Mary out in the world? There is so much work to be doing at home in our space. We're talking about two fucking badass bitch women who were like
seriously.
literally leading the church among the very first. And we're like, sit on the floor at the feet of the teacher. And I've heard so many pastors use that to justify really fucking gross and inappropriate relationships with women because they were talking about how that woman is just learning from them. It's a more of a Mary relationship. They're just learning from me as their teacher. I'm like, what the fuck is that's my own personal tangent. But I think it's so interesting how, again, even though Martha is like doing the thing that they're saying is the biblically woman's job, it's still wrong because she's not being the most subservient. And Mary is, because Mary is literally on the floor at the feet of the man in the room. Never mind that that's not even actually what's happening.
Right.
The person, the woman that's right is the woman that is the lowest she could be in this space. How do you hear that and not be like, this might be bad? This might be wrong.
Right.
Yeah.
It's romanticized. It's been romanticized our whole life, even like the title of the book that way, that is something we should be longing for. Not only to be submissive, but to be the best at being submissive. Not only to give of your time and your talents and your energy and your money to the church, but to be the best at that, which is how they pitted us against each other from day one. Like we're talking about being teenagers and how like the girls didn't like us. You don't think that maybe that came from the first time I said something or did something and a boy told me that he liked that I did that because the other girls don't?
Yeah.
Like that didn't start for me when I was in elementary school. They were
Stop blaming the boys, Rachel. Be more of a Mary heart.
They're always pitting us against each other from day one.
Right.
Which is how they've maintained their power. And even down to this, like we mentioned before, even down to the idea that if a woman is saying you don't have to stay at home and raise your kids, then she is shaming you for staying home and raising your kids, which isn't necessarily true. Like that manipulation that like still making us the enemies of one another instead of recognizing that some of us are mothers and some of us are not. Some of us are wives and some of us are not. And some of us are this, and that there's no rule to being a woman. We're not going to do like we talked earlier today on our personal call. We're not doing the Matt Walsh shit of trying to figure out what's a woman. A woman doesn't have to be what anybody says a woman has to be. The three of us are similar in a lot of ways, and we're also living completely different lives, and we're fully women.
Yeah.
Well, for me, so much of it boils down to value. What you're saying is a woman's value is based on how well she performs biblical womanhood. There's a lot about Christianity that I don't believe, but if I was going to believe in Jesus, Jesus says that a person's value is in that they are a person.
Yeah.
Full stop. A woman's value is not based on performance of womanhood. A woman's value, whoever that woman is, whatever that life looks like, is based on that they are a person.
Yeah.
Right.
And to value someone based on anything beyond the fact that they are a human being deserving of dignity and compassion, that's just fucked up.
Yeah.
And men don't have to deal with that because they have power and control in every circumstance. Women are the ones who primarily have to deal with that, with being devalued based on our performance of a society deeming what women should be and should look like.
Right.
Yeah. I actually hate gendered roles in general. Like, I would love if we could just, like, I understand why you got to do it, medical reasons, whatever. But, like, generically speaking, we're all just human.
Mhm.
And there's really, especially like as we're progressing as a society and realizing that women have all these, like, we're not all put in these boxes. We are all individual and we have unique characteristics and unique likes and dislikes. And there's nothing wrong
Mhm.
about it. It's like
Yeah.
okay. And it doesn't have to fit in this binary way of thinking. Like we're all just human, but
Mhm.
you know,
Right. I am a woman and I like a lot of things. And none
Right.
of those things are women things or men things. They're just things I like.
right.
Yeah.
And I like them and I'm a woman and those things have nothing to do with one another.
Nothing.
Right. Like
I-
it starts from birth. Sorry, Rachel. It
No,
just like
you're good.
it just starts from birth with freaking baby showers and even gendered reveals. You know,
Oh,
if
I
it's a
know.
boy, it's all blue, it's all trucks, it's all thing. And if it's a girl, it's pink, it's bows, it's dolls. It's like this individual person that is coming into this world is probably not even going to like this unless it's that person's conditioned to like it. You know, like that's part of like we're trying to be very intentional with our kids because even though we did not teach them this, they still, our
It
girls
doesn't
still,
matter, yeah.
yeah, they're still like, oh, that's a boy toy. Like,
Mhm.
no, there are no boy toys. There are no girl toys. If you like this toy, we'll get this for you. You can ask for it for Christmas. It does not matter if you think it's a boy or if other people think it's a boy toy. It's just a toy.
Yeah.
But it's hard because it's society. Like it's in the
abs-
stores.
my
They separate the aisles.
When my son was little, he had really long hair. And what we always said was like, when he says, I want to cut my hair, we'll cut his hair. But why do I get to decide that his hair needs to be short? If he likes it long, we're going to leave it alone. He loved it. It wasn't until, and this is what's crazy to me about gender roles. It wasn't until we would be out in a store in public and he'd be with his sister who also had blonde hair. And people would say, oh, hi, girls.
Mm.
And he would be like, I'm a boy. And what's crazy is he was dressed in very stereotypically boy things. He'd be in like fatigues and a football jersey shirt and carrying a sword. And I'm like, for people that care so much about gender markers, why are you stopping at his hair? Like, why are you not viewing him as a whole person? You see shoulder length blonde hair on a toddler and you're like, hi, girl. Hi, girl child. Hi, female. And
Yeah.
it's the weirdest thing. And he started to feel bad about it because people were imposing this thing on him and it made him feel unseen in the world and it
Mm.
made him feel misrepresented. Not
Yeah.
because he didn't like it, but because the world said, hey, you can't. But he never got that from us.
Yeah.
And so you can't protect kids from gendered language or gendered anything. All you can do is teach them, like, the world is going to say that this is what this is. And you can decide for yourself whether it's something you like. And if you like it, who cares?
Yeah.
My son loves My Little Pony. He just likes he likes high fantasy stuff. Like he likes the story. He loves, but it took him a really long time to feel comfortable saying, I want to watch My Little Pony with his sister. He would like look over his shoulder when she would choose it. Or if she got a My Little Pony book from the library, he would like read it over her shoulder because he didn't want to take ownership of what he liked.
Mhm.
And it wasn't until she started taking ownership of things that she liked that were more stereotypical boy things that he started feeling comfortable. And I loved that they gave each other that they
Mhm.
gave each other permission to just like what you like and fuck everybody else.
Yeah.
Breaking generational things here.
Amen.
Mhm.
Amen.
Cheers.
Amen to that.
My
Cheers to that.
LaCroix.
You cannot cheers with water. It's literally bad luck.
It's
I
sparkling
don't
water.
have anything else. Rachel.
Oh, and do you know what I have right now? And I got a text message from somebody watching, called me out on it. She said, oh, are you eating homophobic chicken? Listen,
Who said that?
I think Caitlin did.
Oh,
Listen, they have
Don't bring it
styrofoam cups still. Okay.
now you just sound like you don't care about the environment.
Now Rachel, you're getting canceled. Homophobic chicken, and you don't believe in
Homophobic
climate
chicken.
change.
You guys, there are so many other reasons to cancel me. Like so
For real.
many.
I should tell
am a
you about how
bitch.
I almost got canceled on TikTok this week. I'll tell you about it later.
Yeah, that's
Oh,
an
please do. Missed that one.
off-show conversation. I loved this conversation.
Me too.
It was
I
good.
think this was the most focused show we may have ever had.
Listen, and it started off not very focused.
Yeah.
I mean, we got it all out in the beginning.
Talked about Santa for a while.
This was also our least planned.
No, Abby had
Abby
this
planned it
out.
really
Dude,
well.
I
just
was
mean,
not the least. You just don't read the email.
It's true that like 2 minutes before we went live, she said, "When are we?" And I'm like, "I sent you show notes."
Yeah,
April.
Don't listen to her, you guys. It absolutely. I've literally been reading through the notes as we've been going.
Okay, for y'all planned this very well, but usually we like maybe the most last minute planned. I feel like normally we talk about what we're gonna do like further going into
April,
it.
why don't you say something nice about both of us right now?
I love you both. I've missed you both very much. We don't talk enough.
Pretty generic. I was asking for specifically things you liked about both of us.
Don't listen to her. This is not true, because really what she wants from you right now is for you to be like, shut up, Rachel. Because every time she tells me, say something nice about me, and I do it, she's like, oh God. Why did you take it like that?
My here in Cincinnati friends that listen to this just rolled their eyes so far back in their head, because for the 20-something years, like in an awkward moment or something, I have said, okay, everybody go around the table and say your favorite thing about me. And they hate me for it, but sometimes they do it. Sometimes they indulge me. Just say, you have pretty hair.
Next time we'll play Super Fight.
Oh yes. Listen, you guys, next, what's February, everybody? Valentine's Day. So Abby, what are we talking about?
Smut.
No,
we're going to talk about sex and porn.
It's probably going to be a pretty risque episode.
Please
and I'm
not safe for work. To bed.
So excited.
We should make
Never Have I Ever
intro,
again.
like an after dark intro, and be like,
oh yeah,
Heretics after
Listen,
dark.
It's been probably about a year since we played Never Have I Ever. I might go back and watch it and see if April specifically answers the same way. I want to know how April's year has gone.
No,
I don't know what you guys think I do.
Focusing she talks about masturbation.
She's like having like a sexual
now,
revolution in the last few years, right, April?
With myself and my partner. It's not that exciting.
Also, like, never have I ever had a threesome. And last year she was like, never. And now you're expecting that now she's going to be like, I have.
What kind of year do you think I've had?
I would want to know that story. If that.
Listen, I don't like Never Have I Ever, because it reminds me of how much of a prude I was compared to the two.
Well, that's okay, because it reminds me of how much of
we're going to talk about
I am.
all the things, and we have a fun game planned.
We do. What is it? Don't say it, because I don't remember.
Somebody just say it.
I feel like sometimes you forget that I have a traumatic brain injury and I don't remember.
God. There was this thing. April and I were going back and forth on Snapchat talking about this show, which was planned because that was literally part of the conversation anyway. And April was like, I like that Rachel's posting on her story, but she's not looking at these Snapchats. And I almost said, well, she does have a TBI. And then I didn't send it because I was like, I don't know if this is the appropriate use of that phrase. and Rachel won't listen to these until she's out of the loud environment she's in. And it might not be funny anymore.
No, it's always funny. I am an incredibly forgetful. There's the TBR card. Caitlin, listen, I genuinely don't remember
drinking game, Caitlin.
Ever. And
Did April talk about masturbation? Take a drink. Did Rachel mention her TBI? Take a drink. I don't know what mine is.
I just would like the record to show that if you had a traumatic brain injury, you'd bring it up a lot too, because
you forget that you have it, and so you have to remind me.
Because I sometimes I can't finish a sentence. I don't remember anything.
Bitch, I've got that too. It's ADHD. Does that count?
I literally have a traumatic brain injury.
I know.
If my mom was listening, she'd be very mad. She doesn't like when people make fun of it. She doesn't like when I make fun of it either. Poor thing. She needs to go to therapy.
This is the rule of friendship. If you make fun of something, your friends get to make fun of it. That's just the rule of friendship.
No, I don't jive with that. Okay, well, this
Awkward.
awkward. Maybe you
Awkward.
should just go get off the show now and go be a submissive wife, both of you. I'm gonna go,
Oh,
do
My husband
nothing
has
over
COVID.
here.
I'm staying the fuck away
Yes,
from
I
him.
know. I'm over here with no children and no spouse doing whatever the fuck I want, right? With all my money and my right my debt. That's what it is. Okay.
Remember 10 minutes ago when we were like, this was a great show. This was
yeah,
so
we stayed on
good.
topic, and then
Traveled.
we're like, get off.
Because you know what? We can't.
We're
be
like a
that
teenage girl that doesn't know how to take a
serious.
compliment. They're like, this was a great show, guys.
Oh,
And
it
we're like,
was good.
"Tank
Let's
it
ruin it."
immediately.
Let's absolutely ruin it.
Rachel,
Okay.
when you post this to your feed for
Yeah.
your podcast, can you just like cut off the last 10 minutes of this episode?
So people think that it
please?
was good.
Just edit this out. Right? Ready? Right. Well, you guys, this was a really great episode. You guys, we're so glad that you were all here for this. We can't wait to see you next time. In February, we're going to talk about sex. We're going to talk about porn. We're going to talk about all of our changing theologies and ideologies around all of those sorts of things. And we have a really fun game planned for you. So we will see you next month. Same heretic time, same heretic place. Bye.
Farewell.
Bye, everybody. Same heretic time, same